Namaste everyone. Jaya Shriman Narayana. What we will be doing now is we will be doing our shloka recitation and then a little bit of commentary on this beautiful verse from Bhagavad Gita. And again, this is chapter 4, verse 13. And as always, before we do the actual recitation, I just want to go over each individual word and how they're pronounced. And we'll look at the translation very quickly as well. So looking at the Sanskrita that is there in the chat, it proceeds in this way. Chatur Varnyam Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha Tasya Kartaram Api Mam Vidhi Yakartaram Avyayam. So that's the pronunciation of the words, and the translation is, according to the three modes of material nature, that is guna, and the actions, karma, ascribed to them, the four divisions of human society were created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So very, very nice verse. And again, now just about 3 times, not much more than that. About 3 times we will do the shloka recitation. You have the Sanskrita there in front of you. So wherever you are, feel free to just follow along and recite along with me. To recite Bhagavad Gita or any Vedic scripture in one's home, in one's dwelling, is the most auspicious thing that a person can do. To have the sound vibration, especially of Bhagavad Gita, the very words of Bhagavan Sri Krishna himself, reverberating on the walls of your home is something that is very auspicious. So with that, let's proceed to recite this verse in proper meter. Chaturanyam maya shrishtam Guna karma vibhagashaha Tasya kartaram api mam Vidhi yakataram avyayam Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam Guna karma vibhagashaha Tasya kartaram api mam Vidhi yakartaram avyayam Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam Guna karma vibhagashaha Tasyam kartaram api mam Vidhi yakartaram avyayam Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Lord Bhagavan Shri Krishna says the following. According to the 3 modes of material nature and the actions ascribed to them, the 4 divisions of human society were created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. Wonderful. Well, this is indeed a very practical verse, actually, because of the fact that what this verse is doing is that it is establishing the validity and the authority, the authenticity of what is called the Varna system. Now, here we're talking very specifically about the Varna system, the four Varnas. Varnyam is indicating the Varna system, so Varna. Chatur means four. So the four Varnas. Now, why is this practical, this verse here? What does this have to do with us as specific individuals? Well, it has everything to do with us as specific individuals situated presently within the material world. And the reason why this is the case is because what the Varna system is indeed a way of understanding our individual, our own personal psychophysical nature. Now, I've talked about this many, many times before because the truth of the matter is the idea of the Varna system is something that is central to Sanatana Dharma, and there is no getting around this fact. This Varna system, as we know, is mentioned as long ago as Rig Veda, where indeed we just finished speaking about, commenting on the Purusha Sukta. And if you'll remember, the Varna system is spoken about in the Purusha Sukta, and specifically the portion that is revealed in what is now called Rig Veda very specifically. So indeed, this is a system that is found in Rig Veda, it's found in Mahabharata, it's found in all of the Puranas, it's found in so many different Vedic scriptures, certainly in every single one of what are called the Dharma Shastras. And we see that also several times, actually, not just this one specific verse, but several times it is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. So this is a system that is of importance. There's no way around this. Indeed, it would not be mentioned again and again and again, and in great detail, actually, in some places in very great detail, if it were not of importance. Now, let's talk about the Varna system, and not just theoretically, but very specifically, what this system has to do with us as individuals living in the world, wherever we find ourselves. Oh, some of us are in what is now called South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, all these various nations. Some of us are in Europe, some of us are in America, etc. Some of us are in many other places throughout the world. Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Southeast Asia, and I can go on and on and on. And yet this applies to us wherever we find ourselves. And today in 2025, this is not something which is merely a relic of the past, which sadly many modern, not just academicians, but individuals who have been rulers and leaders of society for several hundred years now, they were hoping that this system would disappear off the face of the earth, never to be seen again, maybe at most spoken of as some sort of barbaric museum relic or something like this. Well, of course, we're very tongue-in-cheek, sad to disappoint such individuals, but it cannot go away. To make it go away, to wish that it would go away, would be like wishing that the sun would go away, that air would go away, that the ground beneath our feet would go away. The Varna system is a part of nature, and very specifically human nature. And indeed, just, not to focus on this too much, because I have in the past to very great degrees, this is not some oppressive system where people are locked in accordance with the happenstance of their birth, and it means that whatever caste they happen to fall in, well, that's it, they're stuck there forever, or at least for this lifetime, etc. No, we're not talking about the caste system. That is a more modern, and more modern meaning roughly 1,000 to 1,200 years. See, that's modern for us. Modern doesn't mean for the last 50 years. It means, again, roughly 1,000 to 1,200 years. That was when the caste system started to become solidified in what we have today, which is indeed a very unfair, very unnatural system, actually. But rather, previous to that, it was understood that the Varna system, more than anything, was a very nice way of individuals knowing what their inner nature was in such a manner that then they could live their lives accordingly and thus be happy. So looking at one's individual nature, of course, if you find that, you, without anyone having to pay you, without anyone instigating you, forcing you, no, your natural tendency is you love to be an artist, for example. Well, that being the case and recognizing that that is your nature, how unhappy would you be if for the totality of your life you were forced to do a job, an occupation that was the opposite of being an artist? How tragic, how horrible. And yet millions, not millions, billions actually, of people in the world today are forced in this way to kind of do things against their very nature. Well, imagine conversely how happy you would be if, understanding your own nature well, your psychophysical nature, if you were then able to engage in those activities, both as far as occupation, but also just in your own personal life, that actually accords with your own psychophysical nature. How happy would you be? How peaceful would you be? How fulfilled would you feel? Etc. That, my friends, is the idea of the Varna system. And indeed, especially the way that it was practiced in the past. Let me give a little caveat here when I say how it was practiced in the past. Well, obviously we're talking about before it became the caste system, so we're certainly talking about, before, let's say, 1,200 years ago, and then the caste system getting worse and worse and worse since then. But are we talking about just, a few hundred years before that, or even 1,000 years? Well, when I say how this was practiced in the past, we have to understand this, of course, this statement, in accordance with also our understanding of how the world devolves. So in other words, the further back you went, stretching into previous yugas, the Varna system was there, and I'll give, again, a caveat to the caveat in a second. But the further back you went, the more perfectly it was practiced. So indeed, at one time, the idea was that as an individual, you lived your life in accordance with your Varna, with your individual Varna. Now, I said I was going to give a caveat to the caveat. In the Satya Yuga, there was no Varna. There was no Varna in the Satya Yuga. Now, were the seeds of Varna there? Oh, yes, indeed they were. But the truth of the matter is, while you still saw diversity among human beings as far as psychophysical nature, people were so well advanced spiritually that for all intents and purposes, if we were to look at a so-called Shudra in the Golden Age, in the Satya Yuga, to us that would be like a Brahmana. Indeed, that would be like the most exalted Brahmana of today. So this is the idea of the Varna system, is that this is a very practical way in which you can engage in a process of self-analysis such that you can know yourself better and what you should be doing with your life. So just to review, what are the Chatur Varnas? What are the four Varnas? Well, they are first Brahmana. A Brahmana is an individual who is somebody who is indeed very, very spiritually oriented, very philosophically oriented. All of their tastes tend to be toward the wholesome, the spiritual, the healthy. So these tend to be individuals who you don't need to read them, you don't need to force them as a child to read a book. For example, as a 7, 8, 9-year-old, you don't have to force them to read some book. They love to read. They love to read. Indeed. You find this a little bit less so today because, of course, the internet, smartphones, video games have ruined the entire earth. But previous to all this, let's say 50 years ago or so, it would be very natural that sometimes you would find a child who, left to their own devices, other kids would be out roughhousing, doing all sorts of things, getting into trouble. But everyone knows this one kid who, if they have free time, they read. Well, that's a Brahmana. That's what a Brahmana is. They are interested in the finer qualities of life, the finer things of life. Then there is the Kshatriya. A Kshatriya, on the other hand, has a different temperament. A Kshatriya is someone who is more of a warrior, more of an administrator, indeed more of a leader, of a ruler. They're the sort of individual who they are what certain historians have called men of action. I forget who first quoted that term. I forget if it was Hegel or someone much, much later. I just can't remember at this point. But there's this term, a man of action. Well, that's what a Kshatriya is. They're the sort of person who, while they are also spiritual, they also tend to be ever so slightly rougher around the edges, meaning just as far as temperament, not as far as following etiquette. These are not people who are thugs. Some people have the idea that warriors are thugs. Well, that's a 20th century, now 21st century stereotype. That really does not fit what an actual Kshatriya is. No, they actually are very refined people. But again, they are willing to get their hands dirty when it comes to defending their nation, defending their people, etc. And they tend to be individuals who are very charismatic in that they are very good organizers, managers, and leaders. That's what a Kshatriya is. Now, also about these two Varnas that we've just discussed, Brahmana and Kshatriya, those of the four Varnas, really of all people, because there are some people who don't even fit into the Varnas, but most people do. These two Varnas are the leadership classes, the leadership Varnas, just to throw that in. Next, there is the Vaishya. A Vaishya is an individual who is more of a merchant, a business person. They are people who produce, who create wealth. As a result, interestingly, also included among Vaishyas, and this has always been the case, are farmers. Farmers. And when we say farmers, we don't mean just somebody who works on a farm. No, we mean an individual who truly is a farmer. They own a farm, whether it's a smaller farm, smaller meaning like 20 acres, whether it's 500 or 1,000 acres. But they are individuals who they create the wealth of society, whether it's in the form of, again, either farming. So therefore, they create all the foodstuffs that are necessary for humanity to survive, or whether they are actual businessmen. They're individuals who, they can be inventors who then make a lot of money, selling what it is that they've created. Or they can be a merchant of some sort. That is, they travel to distant lands and they're importers. They bring things back to sell, etc. In any case, the Vaishyas are individuals who are wealth creators, producers. And then finally, there are the Shudras. Shudras are indeed laborers, individuals who work with their hands. That's the definition. That's the definition of a laborer. It's interesting. Again, there are so many asides that bring this concept to the 20th and 21st century very nicely, where we can see that Varna still applies very much. But, there were attempts for quite a long time now, actually, including in several communist nations, to try to pretend that everyone is a worker, that, yes, the teachers are, they're not teachers, they're workers. The doctors, they're not doctors, they're workers. Even individuals who are highly educated, if you're a professor, no, you're a worker, you're a laborer. Well, that's the idea of Marxism. And of course, that doesn't work, because the definition of an actual laborer is that they work with their hands exclusively. And of course, no, this does not fit a teacher. This does not fit any sort of professor or anyone like this. These are individuals who work with their hands and who are very often skilled laborers, skilled craftsmen. This would include, of course, everything we can think of: masons, carpenters, plumbers, people who work in construction, etc. So many different categories of laborers. Now, again, you notice how I first pointed out how the top two Varnas, they are united in that they are the leadership Varnas. Now the top three Varnas, so there's Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, also are united in that these are all individuals who, interestingly, work primarily with their inner being. That is, they work with their intellect, with their intelligence, with their mind, with their voice, etc. If you analyze the individuals of these top three Varnas, that's what they all do, including the businessman. Interestingly, the businessman very much is somebody who they use their intelligence. Interestingly, a person might, of course, be the Asura's advocate. Well, what about the farmer? He's in the fields all day. He's working with his hands. Yes and no. A person who would say that is a person who actually has never been around actual farmers. And their idea of farming is maybe having a little garden in your backyard or something. No, farmers, again, are actually, traditional farmers are farmer gentlemen. Indeed, in America, for those who don't know the history of America very well, during the Revolutionary War, indeed, you had many gentlemen farmers who, they were farmers, but they also were very intelligent individuals. And yes, they were actually good at business, including farming. And they had their workers, indeed the Shudras, who would do the actual physical labor, but they themselves would handle what is actually the difficult part, and that is keeping it all going and making a profit with their farm. Indeed, people may or may not be aware of this, but many of the revolutionary leaders, the founding fathers of America, including Thomas Jefferson, were exactly these gentlemen farmers. So the point being that all of the top three Varnas are indeed Varnas where they use their intelligence. Now, with the Shudras, on the other hand, indeed, these are individuals who truly use primarily their physical labor. They use their hands, they use their bodies, etc. And when it comes to using their intelligence, other than that which is calculative intelligence, because again, Asura's advocate, the carpenter has to be very intelligent. They have to measure, etc., etc. Yes, that is very true. And nothing should be taken away from the value of laborers. But it's a different form of intelligence. It's a calculative intelligence that the laborer uses. Primarily, they use their body. And again, this is not, I always have to say this, and I truly mean it when I say this, that the truth of the matter is we should never look down upon Shudras. We should never look down upon laborers, people who use their hands. Let me tell you, I deal with laborers all the time, with construction people, because with the temple, of course, periodically we do have to have people come in and do various things. And when that is the case, I accord them the respect that they deserve, because they're experts. They can do things that I cannot. That's why we will have to call them in once in a while. Indeed, our dryer stopped working. So yesterday I had to call, and there's a person who's going to come and fix the dryer. Why did I have to do that? Because I can't. I don't have that knowledge. This person who will come, they know what to do. So we have to respect the workers. But indeed, these are the four Varnas, and the vast majority of humans, not all, but the vast majority of humans indeed fall into one Varna or another. Now, all that being said, I can go on and just give a lecture on Varna, but instead I want to quickly go through this verse, and we will go through this pretty quickly. So let's start again with the very first section of this. According to what? The guna. According to the three modes of material nature. What are the gunas? Well, again, very briefly, I'm going to do this in 60 seconds or less. All materiality exists in a combination of three modes of materiality, and that is sattva, rajas, and tamas. Sattva being goodness, wholesomeness, rajas, passion, activity, and tamas being lethargy, ignorance, downward pulling motion, etc. And what Lord Krishna is saying here is that it is in accordance with which of these varnas predominate in us, but then also the karma that we have as well, the actions that are ascribed to them, that is, to we individuals. This is what produces our varna. Now again, several times Lord Krishna speaks about varna in the Bhagavad Gita. As we go on, we will eventually encounter these verses. And I'm not the only one. Anyone with intelligence has pointed this out, that when Lord Krishna explains what are the very foundations of Varna, he mentions in all of the verses that he talks about Varna in, he mentions again, guna karma, guna karma. This is what creates Varna. At no point does he say janma or birth, but rather guna and karma dictate one's birth. That is how one is born. It is guna and karma that is the foundation of which varna we fall into. Very good. Now let's go on. In accordance with this, the four divisions, that is the varna, chaturvarna, of human society were created by me. Now this is crucial. This is crucial. That this very system itself is seen as something sacred. And again, this is why it's mentioned in so many Vedic scriptures and in great depth very often in great depth. is because it is seen as something that is sacred, something that is divine. The idea that humanity can be categorized into 4 different psychophysical classes or divisions. This is found not just in quote-unquote Hinduism, as these atheistic anti-Hindu scholars always like to say, oh yes, these Hindus and their caste system, oh, they're so oppressive. No, the Varna system has existed among all civilized humans. It's eternal. It's sacred. It's Dharma. It is part of the natural way. So thus you find the Varna system in ancient Greece. You find it in ancient Rome. You find it in fill in the blank. Whatever ancient civilization you will have found it there. And why is it the case that it is a system that is sacred and found everywhere and that must be upheld and understood and upheld? It's because it was created by God and by no one else, by God. Not by some evil little person who wanted to oppress other people and create artificial classes so that he could rule over them. No, that's what the Marxists say. The Marxists are fools. Rather, this was created, indeed, directly by God. Now, let's go on. Now, of course, Lord Krishna speaks of himself and his own nature. And although I am the creator of the system, let's pause there. So again, he reiterates this. So this was created by him, and now he reiterates that this Varna system is something of which he is the creator. And although I am the creator of this system. You should know that I am yet the non-doer. Now, let's pause here. What is Krishna really saying? Well, he's saying layers of statements with this one little clause. You should know that I am yet the non-doer. And we're not going to go through every single layer. First of all, we'll just go through maybe 2. First of all, he is explaining his own ontological status. That what does he mean by I am yet the non-doer? It means that, of course, he transcends all things. It means that he is God. And this is the nature of God, that God is not a doer in the normative sense of that term. What does this mean? Going very deeply and very, very quickly. You've heard me say very often that the transcendent realm, the realm of consciousness, Vaikuntha, exists in a realm beyond time, beyond space, and beyond causality. And sometimes people will not so much challenge me, no one's ever challenged me on that, but they do find it very confusing. Oh my Lord, how can you do something if you live in a realm without causality? Well, he's confirming this here. Lord Krishna is confirming this. He is the non-doer, and yet everything is done by his grace alone. This is what it means to do without causality. So he's pointing to his ontological status. The other thing that he's doing is he is showing that necessarily he transcends the Varna system. Only a being who is more perfect than Varna can create Varna. This is the nature of God. That he would only be able to create the Varna system if he himself were untouched by the Varna system. And then how is all this? Again, how this concludes, being unchangeable. That God is unchangeable. What is meant by unchangeable? Everything that you can think of and that which is beyond all human comprehension. That is, that God is eternal, that God always is God. It's not that God has dharma emanate from him as the concretized form within the material world of his grace. But more than this, it's not merely that God is the source of all dharma, but that he is always so. Can you imagine if suddenly he changed and he said, no, I'm going to be the source now of all adharma. That's what I'm rooting for now. Of course, that's an impossibility. That's an absolute impossibility. So God is unchangeable. Thus, he has the ability to do all the above. In a way, and this is how I will end this, in a way, looking at this verse, you want to look at it backwards. God is unchangeable. Therefore, he is the non-doer, i.e. transcendent. Therefore, he is the creator of the system. And how does the system operate? Well, first of all, there are 4 divisions, and applying to whom? To human society. And how are these 4 divisions determined? by guna and karma. So looking at this backwards, you are now looking at the verse theomorphically, from God's perspective on down. And that is actually the rahasya, that is actually the secret of this verse, and how you can fully understand it perfectly. So with that, we will stop here for now. I thank you for listening to my discourse on this verse from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 13. Namaste. Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Jaya Shriman Narayana.
Until next time, everyone, take good care.